be interesting. So we're going to jump into, I believe, taking a look at our first matches. Teams and team sheets when they're ready to be pulled up. So our first match, I believe, is between Belgium and Sweden, being Roxanne versus Alexander, respectively.
Yeah, I mean it's gonna be a great match. I mean, the big thing now is like how these matches are really going to be impacting the stand. So like, if we take a like, I mean, from our, obviously we can see some of the information here. Sweden and Belgium actually are the two teams that are in the lead of their group, and it does seem as if the other teams are in a position where they might not be able to catch up anyways. But like, obviously, winning this week does secure that you're going to guaranteed be like that top seed, because the two top seeds are playing each other. So this is actually pretty important, right? Because it can determine whether you get placed in pot 2 or pot 3, right? And means that it can change like what teams you're really like matching into, right? If you're in pot 2 spot, that means you're probably going to be playing a slightly better, I guess, like group to get out of, pretty much. Like it can change who you're playing for sure.
Yes, absolutely. So diving straight into Sweden, we have Alexander's team and a couple of little accolades that they've gotten. Malmo Regional top 32, London Open top 32, and being a Worlds competitor and World Cup competitor for a good few times in a row. So we can see there is a clear history for Alexander of being a very high-level Pokemon trainer. I mean, top 32 is no small feat whatsoever, and being able to do that a good few times and playing in the Worlds Open is really, really interesting. So looking at the team itself, there are some Pokemon here which you'd be expecting to see, and some Pokemon which you don't really want to see ever. Now, Joe, I appreciate you will have an incredible analysis at looking into this. I'm seeing Dondozo Tatsugiri. This is regulation set H, where the general power level is a lot lower. I'm seeing a really, really powerful, quite aggressive team set up here from Alexander, but then there is that beast, Dondozo and Tatsugiri. I'm not sure about you. I'm terrified of seeing this Pokemon, even on, team sheets, let alone seeing it be played against me. I mean, is there anything that particularly stands out to yourself on this team sheet?
I would definitely say a few things stand out. So, I mean, immediately looking at this, right? Like, I'm looking at a Stealth Rock coaching Annihilate, right? So, Stealth Rock obviously going to be pairing with a Yawn from Dondozo, and the Dondozo also featuring Terra Electric, which isn't the most frequent Terra. Definitely something we see a little bit less frequently than others. But in the combination with the coaching, strengthening up that body press, strengthening up that wave crash, being able to go for Yawns to force out the cycling as you have Stealth Rocks up, that's actually a pretty interesting strategy, and not something that I've seen featured very frequently on these Dondozo teams, right? So also the Annihilate running a Terra Fire, which I think is really interesting considering the fact of you're not particularly using it as like a setup option. So you're favoring Fire Terra. Maybe it's for a specific sun-based matchup or something along those lines, maybe an opposing, Volcarona. But I do think that's like a really interesting choice to have that Fire Terra instead of something more conventional like the Grass Terra, or even like fighting Terastallizations. You could just do more damage with that close combat if you're running the Focus Sash.
It's honestly a really, really cool team, but we do have two trainers as part of this match. So we're going to move it over to Belgium, represented by Roxanne this time around. So Roxanne, as you can see by the accolades, is somewhat of a newer player, and this is exactly what we love to see. We're seeing newer trainers really, really rising up. So taking part in the Road to Anaheim Victory Road tournament, shout out Victory Road, hitting top 32, which is really, really difficult to be doing, getting day 2 within the March challenge. They have done a lot of work within Victory Road stuff, and clearly putting in the work to try and get Belgium to go through to hopefully finals and win it through this year. So having a quick nosy at the team, there's a Pokemon here that I also really love to see in contrast to the previous team. I love an Alola Ninetales representing that Aurora Veil, giving a lot of defensive lining towards the team with that Snow Warning, bringing in Snow and Aurora Veil, essentially setting up screens physically and specially, giving the team a lot more survivability and bulk to be paired with that nice Grassy Surge from the Rillaboom you can see in the top left corner. This team seems to have a lot of bulk, a lot of slow play presence to maybe whittle down your opponents and basically do some big damage with some setup moves like that lovely little Nasty Plot from Goldengo.
Yeah, I'd say overall pretty standard team, right? I think it features a lot of the mons that we're used to expecting in this format, right? Specifically looking at the Golden Go with Nasty Plot next to Double Fake Out, right? We have a Ninetales with Aurora Veil here. So very similar to the team that Lele Brigante used to win the first tournament of Regulation H, right? Or the first big regional. The main difference here would just be the Dragonite over the Sneasler with Acrobatics, Swords Dance. And it is worth noting this kind of archetype has just had a lot of success in this format. Right. You've seen a lot of these kind of teams running around. I mean, basically 2 versions of it in finals of Milwaukee as well. And then I think it is worth noting there's like a couple of interesting things here. I think the Incineroar with Citrus Berry and Terra Grass instead of the more common like Safety Goggles and Terra Ghost, right? There are definitely some differences there for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, I'm not sure about you, Joe. I'm really keen to jump into this match and see what's going on. They've got very powerful teams from very good trainers, so we're going to have everything kicking off straight away. We are looking at Alexander's perspective with Roxanne leading with Incineroar and the Ursaluna Blood Moon hitting a Naughty Intimidate into the Dondoza and the Annihilate. But Annihilate loves to see this. Kitty Cat Roars gets a Defiant boost. Its attack went down by 1 stage, then bulked up by 2 in return. So this is an increased attack Annihilate, immediately threatening some fighting type damage onto the Incineroar and the Ursaluna. So a very precarious position for Roxanne to be put into right from turn 0.
I think it is worth noting here too that even though the Dondoza does get intimidated, due to the fact that you have that body press, it does make it at least a little bit better. Not to mention the fact that you're trading it off for a +1 on this Annihilate is so useful, right? Now, you do have a lot of pressure onto both fighting weak Pokemon here on the side. You have an opportunity to potentially set up Stealth Rock as well, but just going for straight damage definitely isn't a bad call. Now, what's really interesting about the mind game here is, could there be a Protect Coaching? Could there be a Close Combat? Could there be a Double Attack? There's so many options that you can do, but we're going to see over here Roxanne opts to go for the switch, most likely to something like the Rillaboom or Dragonite. Dragonite is going to be the partner that comes in, which is going to allow a Haze to come out if the Dondozo had combined, which it decided not to, which in this case I think ended up being a lot better.
And we can't stress how important the Haze on that Dragonite actually is. Dondozo is a beast of a Pokemon which gets +2 boost when a Tatsugiri is put onto the field next to it. Haze reducing all of those stats down is extremely beneficial. So the Terrestrialization on the Ursaluna does, I believe, then save it from getting 1 hit knocked out by the Annihilate, hitting a huge close combat, hitting about 60% into it. Yawn is then coming out into that same slot, so we're going to have a snoozy little bear pretty soon. Oh, excuse me.
Yeah, I mean, the yawn here is nice. I guess the main trade-off really is like you took a bunch of damage on the Ursaluna as well. I would say you definitely aren't like super happy with this turn. You took a ton of damage on the Ursaluna. You had to burn Terra. You got yawned, right? This is gonna put you like pretty behind. The nice thing is at least since you didn't combine, you are able to freely like switch out this Dondozo for later on, and you can potentially start using this Annihilate to really wreak some havoc with Stealth Rock coaching. Even go for another attack, right? There's a lot of options here. I would still say Alexander's probably feeling pretty good about this, but this can definitely flip around, especially if a Scale Shot does land into this Annihilate and knock it out.
Oh, absolutely. Losing the Annihilate would be absolutely devastating, honestly. It's such a powerhouse of a Pokemon, but actually Annihilate choosing to boost up its friend Volcarona, who's just switched in, going for a coaching, which increases the physical attack and the defense. And yes, although Volcarona is typically seen as a special attacker, that defense boost is crazy, but the Scale Shot landing into the Annihilate, immediately getting a critical hit, hitting once, hitting twice. We have 3, and I believe the loaded dice makes it a minimum of 4, which does get a clean knockout onto the Annihilate. So it got some value. It was able to hit a coaching, but now this Dragonite has given itself a speed boost, and it's been able to take out such an oppressive threat from Alexander's field.
Will it be a yawn? No, it's a Blood Moon, but that's still not exactly the ideal attack to be taking here. Volcarona taking a huge chunk of damage, using up that Citrus Berry to heal over half, but that's not exactly the best turn you could have had, right? Like, I mean, you switch your Dondozo doesn't really have a great way to deal with this Dragonite. So even if you combine it with Tatsugiri next turn, you're not really going to be able to get rid of this Dragonite. At least one of the nice things is you got this Ursaluna, but I think actually getting a little sneak peek that it might not be the Tatsugiri in the back instead of a different Pokemon. So threatening the Dondozo, but not necessarily having the pieces to get it set up. But opting to go for a yawn and a quiver here, maybe just preventing this Dragonite from being able to sit on the field, keep hazing away Volcarona's boost and taking the opportunity to get up that Quiver Dance. But if Terra Fairy comes out here, that won't be the best in the Rillaboom, who still can do a good chunk of damage with that Wood Hammer.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a really, really precarious position to be in. Obviously, Roxanne not knowing what Alexander has in the back, we as the viewers are able to see there's no Tatsugiri, but it's almost forcing the Dragonite to keep a presence on the board, as soon as it may switch out, we can get the switch and get some big damage out. So the Terrestrialization does in fact come up from the Volcarona, whilst Dragonite actually just returns and goes for a Tailwind, ensuring that even if you are going to be clicking Quiver Dance, even if you are getting a Commander boost on the Dondozo, we're still going to be able to maintain speed control, as speed is one of the most important things in this game. Quiver Dance has then hit, whilst Dondozo goes for a cheeky yawn onto the Dragonite. Are we then going to see it switching out, or is Dragonite going to stay in and have a little snooze while sat next to its friend Rillaboom?
I think a really interesting part of this board state is now there's a little bit of an advantage with the Dragonite feeling a little bit forced to switch out. Now, the main issue is if Dragonite just decides to go for a Haze and Rillaboom decides to go for a Woodhammer into Volcarona, you will lose the Volcarona here because it's going to lose its defense boost and it's going to lose its stat boost. So Rillaboom would theoretically outspeed if Dragonite is faster. Now, we're going to have to see what gets selected here. Dragonite does opt to switch, so being scared of falling asleep to that yawn, we're going to see the switch go back into that Incineroar. Very safe cycle here, and we're going to have to see what the Rillaboom chooses to do here.
Yeah, so the Intimidate coming in and scaring away all of the big boosts, whilst Rillaboom's going for a devastating Woodhammer into the Volcarona, not quite able to get enough damage out, likely due to that coaching boost that you mentioned beforehand. It's very, very close, and Incineroar dodging the heat wave, but Rillaboom is able to hang on by a thread.
But the burn!
Oh, it gets burned. That's one of the most devastating things that you can see, reducing the amount of physical damage that this Rillaboom is going to be able to be pushing out through these future turns. So the burn damage will be somewhat mitigated by the grassy terrain, but it's that damage output that's really going to be hindered for this poor Rillaboom. So Roxanne has been put on the back foot by a very lucky burn there. It's a real interesting turn that's just transpired, as Incineroar is the one that you would want to tank the hit, but unfortunately Rillaboom has had to sit there and potentially lose its way of being able to one-hit knockout this Dondozo.
Yeah, luckily you do still have some options here, especially, I mean, the burn, I guess from, Alexander's side with that burn, it does put you in a position where now you can go for a protect, stall for a turn, try and stop this Rillaboom from attacking. You can try to throw out an attack with this Dondozo to knock out the Rillaboom, but if Rillaboom calls this protect, it could have thrown a Woodhammer into Dondozo, just get chipped before it got knocked out. Did opt to keep the Volcarona honest here, which makes a lot of sense. You kind of don't want to let it just sit there and keep getting set up. But I think the fact that this Dragonite is well preserved in the back is going to be really useful for being able to haze this Volcarona if for some reason this Rillaboom can't deal with it. Now, realistically speaking, if you're Alexander, what you have to be thinking about here is, first off, if my Volcarona can live from this range, right, I could consider leaving it into attack. But if I can't, is it worth switching it out to preserve it, even the boost on it? And we are going to see hovering over the Dragonite, considering that switch, which would be, again, really good for being able to conserve that piece. Volcarona is going to switch out, and we'll have to see what Dondozo launches into that Incineroar slot.
Now, I can't lie, I really do like this play. Yes, you are sacrificing those buffs, as you mentioned, but predicting that the Rillaboom is going to be attacking into that slot, either with a Woodhammer or a Grassy Glide, you want to make sure you're able to keep your big, strong pieces in play. Dondozo is able to take that, parting shot totally fine, as I believe, based on how Alexander's been playing, we might be just looking at more of a snoozy play, as the Dondozo is actually a really bulky piece that is very beneficial for Alexander, being able to, threaten putting everything to sleep and forcing Roxanne to keep switching out. It's almost a free way of enabling Alexander's Pokemon on the side to be able to get their own buffs. As we've noticed, we've got Dragonite, which has the Scale Shot, which increases its own speed, and the Volcarona, which has the Quiver Dance, that's also able to increase its speed and special attacks. So the Dondozo is playing a couple of roles, so having it be hit with a parting shot, correct me if you believe otherwise, I feel like it's not actually the worst thing that could be happening on Alexander's side of the board.
Yeah, I think, to be honest, the yawn is getting so much value in this game, right? You're forcing consistent switches out from Roxanne's side, and if you can find a way to weave this Volcarona in to try and avoid this Dragonite launching a Scale Shot into one of your partners, and then maybe either being able to remove that Dragonite or remove the Pokemon that switches into it, could be really good here. Now, it is worth noting that there are still a lot of well-preserved pieces on Roxanne's side, right? You still have the Incineroar. The Rillaboom is pretty low, so it is likely going to be leaving the field soon. You might actually be okay leaving it on the field a little bit longer, to be honest, since it's not doing much. And a half-health Blood Moon Ursaluna. So realistically, if those tools continue to be managed well, getting in the Ursaluna here, it's a little bit scary, though, because if you end up getting Scale Shotted here and taken down to a low HP, it might be easier to get Roxanne down to the last two Pokemon. But Incineroar also going to be coming in, going for that double switch, so this Ursaluna is going to be taking a little bit less if Scale Shot goes into the Yawn slot.
Yeah, but we are going to see Dondozo actually kicking it back. Maybe we've had too many debuffs going through this match. There's been a lot of intimidating and a lot of parting shots to keep things moving. So we're seeing Volcarona hit the field again. Now, I do like the idea of switching it in, as the grassy terrain is going to be prevalent, and by preserving the Rillaboom in the back, everything's going to be healing up even further. So as you mentioned, Scale Shot has now hit into Ursaluna. It's hit 4 times successfully, and I believe that Intimidate may well have had a decent factor in actually making sure that this Ursaluna Blood Moon does actually not get knocked out this turn. So although Alexander may well have the speed, the Ursaluna is still a very terrifying Pokemon to be dealing with. You can't just risk leaving it alone, even though it's asleep, as if it does wake up, it's going to be able to get some devastatingly powerful moves off. So you can't just leave this sleeping bear alone, but you're in a position when you're kind of having to think, like, what can I do? Like, what is Alexander's priority going to be? We've got 2 Pokemon that want to be able to deal large amounts of damage. Volcarona loving the idea of setting up, but you can't just set up in front of a Pokemon which has the potential to one-shot either the Dragonite or the Volcarona. Dragonite being able to, get hit by a Blood Moon is going to be devastating if this sleepy bear wakes up.
Yeah, we're gonna see the Haze come out here, which is a interesting choice because you do take away the attack drop on the Dragonite, and opting up for Terra Blast, trying to get this knockout on the Blood Moon. Is it going to be able to get it? It will, which now means that this Dragonite, without being intimidated, and a Volcarona at a decent amount of health, can provide a decent bit of pressure, but you are allowing the Incineroar to retaliate with potential Flare Blitz here, or knockoff going into the Dragonite, removing that loaded dice and getting a critical hit, which is a lot of damage, which now means that you are not guaranteed to land all of your Scale Shots for 4 or 5 hits.
Yeah, so one of the biggest moves that the Dragonite does really have available is Scale Shot. So loaded dice guarantees at least 4. So at this point in time, you can get even a first shot miss on the Scale Shot, which isn't the most likely thing in the world. However, it is a really, really big potential, and it's a massive risk that Alexander now has to factor in when making any sort of move decisions here, because missing a move like that can be absolutely devastating. It's a super effective hit into the Dragonite. If you've got the speed, you may well be able to knock it out, but it's just that miss chance. Caster's Curse, I've said it now, so I'm really sorry that happens. Volcarona is going to go in for a naughty Quiver Dance, so we're going to get some lovely buffs to the special attack, special defense, and speed by 1 stage each. So this Volcarona is preparing itself to become a real big threat. Dragonite hitting.
Will it hit? Will it hit multiple times?
Oh, we've got 2. Oh, with a.
It needs 4. It needs 4. It needs 4.
It needs 4. Can we hit 4 though? It says super effective. That's 3 times.
3.
And that's the curse. That is the curse of the loaded dice. You lose it. You cannot guarantee you're able to take knockouts on opposing Dragonite. So the Dragonite on Roxanne's side is going to kick back and say, yeah, 1 will do it. Taking out Alexander's. It's a devastating loss. That 1 item getting knocked off might have not been the most impactful thing the turn before, but on this turn here, Alexander's lost an absolute powerhouse of a Pokemon.
And Flare Blitz going in, Volcarona is going to be able to easily get that knockout, which only leaves Dondozo as the last stand against the remaining Pokemon. I would have a little bit more confidence if it had a move to hit this Dragonite, but unfortunately running that Body Press and Wave Crash set, and with a full health Incineroar, going to be able to rotate in and out with that Intimidate and being able to go for that potential knockoff. It is going to be a very uphill battle here for this Dondozo. There is a silver lining to this, which is Dragonite is pretty low on health. So if you are able to get rid of this Dragonite on a key turn where you call no protect, you can potentially win the game. But Protect and Parting Shot comes out here, Rillaboom comes in, you opt to go for a fake out, maybe switch back in that Incineroar, play it safe, play it slow, you should be able to win. But Skill Shot comes out here, taking the risk, allowing Dragonite to be hit on this turn.
So we are just going for maximum damage from Roxanne's side of the field. I mean, we're going for a big Scale Shot, doing a decent potential of damage. And yes, we're decreasing our own defense on the Dragonite. However, you're not going to be able to take many hits anyway. Incineroar going for the knockoff. A key piece for this Dondozo is having this leftovers. This is a Pokemon that wants to stay on the board. We stand on the board and we will just survive. Wave Crash hit against the Dragonite, taking out that nice finishing knockout on a critical hit. Did it matter? We'll never know. Dragonite going down, leaving Roxanne with, I believe, a Rillaboom and an Incineroar to take on this Dondozo on its own that has no leftovers. So it's going to get some free healing from the Rillaboom entering the field, the grassy terrain giving some healing every single turn. However, we're looking at a 2v1, and as you say, a very, very uphill battle. Now, I've seen Dondozos do absolutely horrendous things, as it is a Pokemon that you should always fear and respect. However, this is looking very, very positive for Roxanne right now. Dondozo, cheeky Protect to get some more healing up from the grassy terrain, but I'm just wondering, how long can we really outlast this?
I think a big thing here that's going to make a big difference is realistically the scale shot connecting was the big part of that turn, right? So if you're taking the risk of choosing to attack with that Dragonite on that turn, if you miss, you probably are going to lose the game because you won't get enough damage into the Dondozo, and the burn Rillaboom with that Woodhammer, it might be able to still win, but it's going to be a lot closer. But because the Dragonite was able to connect that scale shot onto the Dondozo, it did manage to get this Dondozo low enough that even though the Rillaboom is burned, this Woodhammer and knockoff should be able to pick up. Yes, we are going to see the Woodhammer just do a huge amount of damage here and knock out that Dondozo. I mean, Woodhammer in grassy terrain is no slouch, right? Still very strong. Not too surprised to see that KO come out, but I definitely think the most impactful part of that was being able to connect that scale shot on the previous turn, right? You could say, okay, I was able to connect that scale shot. I was able to put in range of Woodhammer and knockoff. Perfectly fine, right? Now, imagine if we explored the world where that skill shot on that turn missed, right? It was a potential risk that was, you know, it was possible. It's a 90% accurate move, and as much as we would love for skill shot to always connect, right? We have seen it not connect on a lot of streams before. So I think that would have been a really interesting way to maybe reach a safer conclusion to the game. That being said, Roxanne playing excellently, able to position the piece as well. And I think the really key moment was getting that knockoff on that Dragonite, even though Alexander's Dragonite was faster, the fact it didn't have that loaded dice to guarantee that it could connect 4 skill shots did end up making a huge difference there. Dragonite was able to survive, and it was able to clutch up the game.
Oh yeah, no, it was incredible, and just, I mean, that's one of the reasons why everyone loves Incineroar, right? It's got such good utility in terms of like reducing stats. It's got a fake out and being able to knock off items, which, as we've seen in this match, can be so crucial for a Pokemon or a game plan to kind of be able to follow through and take a game through to a win. It is just so important. So very fair play to Roxanne for taking that first game. So I'm curious on your thoughts. So obviously Alexander did play extremely well and really tried to move every single line they could to reach their end game. But what do we think could change? You know, do we want to see a Tatsugiri with a Dondozo, or, you know, what are your thoughts on that, on maybe Alexander taking game 2?
I actually liked not taking Tatsugiri here because I felt like one of the biggest issues was the fact that the Dragonite with the fake out rotation and the Yawn Ursaluna has a lot of answers into Dondozo. So I really like the fact that the Annihilate was in the lead with the Dondozo. You're kind of baiting that you have the Tatsugiri, but you're not necessarily guaranteed to. I felt like the lead was actually pretty strong for Alexander. It was just about Roxanne being able to convert off of the game, slowly gaining like smaller turns that didn't look that impactful first, but being able to get some good damage on the Volcarona coming in, being able to, you know, obviously catch a couple of different switches, position properly. I think that was all really impactful. So what I think we're gonna have to see is maybe more of a different sequencing rather than, you know, a different plan. And we are gonna see similar leads. So both players really tend to seem to agree, at least. Although Roxanne might have benefited from switching to something like Rillaboom in the lead to not give this Annihilate so much pressure on turn 1. That being said, +1 Annihilate, Dozo on this board, probably feeling pretty good about your position again, but maybe taking a different route this time.
Yeah, no, so I'm really curious to see, as I don't believe there was actually much even fake out action in the last game. We're not actually seeing any fake out action this game. Annihilate going for a little switch up, capitalizing on Roxanne's favour towards having pivoting and really powerful positioning, getting up a Stealth Rocks to make sure everything's getting hurt every time it switches in. Ursula Blood Moon hitting a namesake Blood Moon into the Annihilate and the knockoff. We are not happy that this Annihilate has been able to get that attack boost, so doubling into it. A very sure knockout on turn 1. Really devastating for Alexander, unfortunately. But Dondozo is able to get a little yawn out into the Ursula Blood Moon, starting that snowball rolling of going, I'm just going to keep putting your things to sleep. Now, if you are going to be rotating out like you were in the last game, you are going to be taking a lot of damage every single time you do it. Dragonite hopping in, flapping in to take the place of the Fallen Annihilate. So we've got a really good amount of damage being able to be pressured from both of Alexander's Pokemon right now.
Can we talk about how crazy the Annihilate getting double targeted with no Terra from Roxanne's side is on turn 1? Because I feel like we were like missing that a little bit. Like that's so incredibly risky, right? You have a close combat from a +1 Annihilate potentially going into an Ursaluna or an Incineroar. Both are going to get the knockouts. No Terra, doubling the Annihilate, completely ignoring the fact that it can get a knockout here. I genuinely think that turn 1 was so strong from Roxanne. If Roxanne plays safe here, it's going to be a very uphill battle from Alexander. We're just going to see the skill shot go into Incineroar, which will do damage, but likely this Incineroar is going to be faster than the Dragonite. So I would say Roxanne is going to be able to navigate this Ursaluna into a really hard to remove position, especially with that Terra Electric Preserve.
Yeah, I mean, this is the kind of thing that we live for during the World Cup, isn't it? We want to see those crazy plays. We want to see these insane movements and, mad level reads. So that is exactly what Roxanne has been doing. Like you say, No Terror is insane. And we're going to see the Incineroar getting a parting shot out into the Dragonite. We're saying, no, you really aren't going to be hitting me very hard right now. And we're going to see the Ursaluna switching back in. So exactly like you say, this is going to be a sticky bear as though its feet are covered in honey. This thing is not going to be moving. But Dondozo is going to do its best, hitting a wave crash into the Ursaluna, doing just under 50% damage, so taking some naughty recoil on the back of it. However, everything is going to be getting some nice healing, other than the Dragonite, who doesn't touch the floor, unfortunately. So everything's going to be getting a little bit more health back. But this Ursaluna now in, if I may say, quite a scary position, as the Pokemon itself is quite physically defensive, so the Dragonite might not be able to put as much pressure on as, Alexander may be hoping for right now.
I mean, I think a big part of this too is that the Ursaluna is like, I mean, you saw it take a wave crash, right? Like, it's a decent chunk of damage for sure. Like, I mean, 45%, right? But it's just going to be able to heal it all back up with the leftovers, and you're not really punished for just playing pretty safe here. Maybe switching this Rillaboom back into Incineroar, going for Protect, getting Fake Out Pressure next turn, right? Like, it is something that you can play very safe. The Stealth Rocks will punish that a little bit, so if an attack does go into the Incineroar, obviously it can get some chip, but that Citrus Berry just allowing it to stay above half, probably living any attacks going into it unless it gets doubled here. Intimidate just playing a super crucial role here for being able to preserve this Ursaluna.
Yeah, I mean, this revolving door, as some may say, between the Rillaboom and the Incineroar both presenting fake out pressures, and the Incineroar being able to just constantly intimidate everything, it just really, really plays into that line that you've just mentioned, saying that this Ursaluna Blood Moon is just going to be sticking about. We're going to be healing and healing every single turn, and because Rillaboom is just rotating in and out and in and out, we almost have a perpetual state of grassy terrain. We're getting 2 stages of healing on everything on Roxanne's side of the board. So, even though, yeah, we are getting chipped by some Stealth Rocks every time we switch, we're kind of having that be mitigated right now. So Alexander's initial strategy of going for that Annihilate Stealth Rocks might not actually be playing out to be as beneficial as they were hoping. This revolving door is just able to keep building itself back up and up and up, whilst punishing the physical attackers that Alexander is just bringing out into the board. So I'm really keen to see where Roxanne's going to be targeting into, as I'd love to see a Blood Moon come out and hit something. Dragonite not wanting to take the hit, bringing in everybody's favourite Pokemon, Volcarona.
Yeah, I mean, Fake Out going into the Volcarona here. We're going to see a Blood Moon come out into Volcarona as well. So Volcarona, again, not being able to get in safely for free here. And I think that's a really big deal, right? Like, as you're switching in pieces, you want to be able to put yourself in positions where you're kind of doing it for free, or you're not taking that much damage. But we're just going to see the body press go into Incineroar. Doesn't even get the knockout. And I think a really important aspect of the previous turn that I wanted to bring some attention to was the double Protect coming out in face of Fake Out from Rillaboom, just being completely called out by Roxanne as well with that Incineroar switch, right? Like, now Protect is burned, you can't double Protect to stall out the Fake Out, and you're forced to take this switch where Volcarona just takes a ton of chips. So Roxanne just every single turn getting more and more value. It is making it very, very difficult for Alexander to come back, especially if the Incineroar, even though it might go down to Stealth Rocks later, being preserved potentially to throw out one more Intimidate before going down.
Yeah, and honestly, at a certain point in time, you kind of got to think, when am I okay with potentially sacrificing my Incineroar so that I can get a free switch into something like the Rillaboom? Because then you're just giving out more free fake out pressure, and Protects aren't infinite. You can try and go for doubles and triples, but it's a real risky move that you want to be playing. You want to be playing safe, you want to be playing calculated. So by almost taking a knockout on the Incineroar, you might actually be opening yourself up to more damage. So Volcarona going for a safe Protect here, wanting to capitalize on the grassy terrain to be healing up, as we know the Ursaluna can do massive amounts of damage, and we want to avoid the yawn, which just so happens to hit into that slot. Alexander calling either some damage, or a yawn is going to be coming out into that slot. Knockoff hitting into the Dondozo. Now, we saw the impact of a knockoff into a Dondozo during the last game. We saw it into the Dragonite as well. Dondozo clapping back and saying, yeah, you've taken my apple, but I'm just going to knock you out instead. So Dondozo now has lost one layer of healing, so it's only going to be getting healing from the grassy terrain, which isn't a lot, but it's always going to be something. Ursaluna pretty much back up to full health thanks to its combination of leftovers and grassy terrain, so we have a very, very healthy bear to be staring down now.
Yeah, I mean, I think a big part of this as well is like, regardless of what's brought in from Roxanne, you have a lot of pressure here, right? If you choose to bring in the Rillaboom, you're going to have that Wood Hammer pressure into the opposing Dondozo, or have Fake Out pressure. The rocks are going to get a little bit of chip down, but I feel like trading knockoff for the Incineroar KO there is pretty valuable. Dondozo is pretty annoying, it's pretty bulky, and getting rid of its leftovers kind of removes any ability of it to recover. I think a really important aspect of this turn is now that this Ursaluna is at full health, again, you can play it really aggressively, just go for damage. The problem here is like, what can you really do to stop the Volcarona from going down, right? Maybe you can switch the Volcarona back into Dragonite to avoid something like the combination of High Horsepower and Blood Moon, or Wood Hammer and Blood Moon going into the Volcarona. But I feel like overall, you're still going to be forced to trade a lot of damage here, right? So if we do see that combination of the Wood Hammer breaking the multi-scale and Blood Moon going into this Dragonite is not going to appreciate all the damage it's taking.
No, the poor thing's just gotten a Mega Evolution, and it's got the potential to actually just be knocked out entirely, which is a crazy, crazy feat. So the Blood Moon is going to be launched out into the Dragonite multi-scale, massively reducing that amount of damage down to only 60 points taken, as we can see from the player's perspective. Dondozo going for a cheeky yawn onto the onto the Ursaluna. So damage definitely being dealt out. However, I feel like it was a bit of a scary turn for Alexander, as you've just taken a fair whack of damage and had your multi-scale broken. Whilst you've gotten a yawn off onto the Ursaluna, yes, but if Roxanne keeps pushing with the pressure, you're kind of in a position where you're thinking, what can I do? As the Rillaboom, as we saw, even while burned on grassy terrain, did a lot of damage with a Wood Hammer. So there's a lot of threat coming towards kind of either Pokemon here, depending if Roxanne chooses to play aggressively or if they're going to be taking a defensive switch.
I do think that Alexander in a pretty good position here, landing that yawn down on the opposing slot on the Ursaluna, forcing it into a switch. Blood Moon cannot be reused because it has a turn to recharge, and not getting caught with the Wood Hammer and Blood Moon means the Dragonite took way less damage than it maybe might have had to. And realistically here, with the Rillaboom choosing to switch out into the Dragonite, that can be good, but you're called out by a Scale Shot here, especially with the multi-scale being broken. This could be a very devastating turn. We are going to see the Terra come out here, but it might be a little bit rough regardless, because you are putting yourself in a position where you are forced to take a bunch of damage. And I think just that one turn, being able to get in that Dragonite without taking that Wood Hammer and Blood Moon, now putting Alexander in an excellent position. Scale Shot does land into this Dragonite. It is going to be a knockout. We are going to see that loaded dice on it. Wow. I mean, the game just completely flipped around on that turn. And yeah, I think the big deal was just really being able to get in that Dragonite with the multi-scale still preserved. Going for that high horsepower doesn't necessarily look like a big deal at first, but you see how the outcome happens this turn. It's a lot rougher than it looks.
Yeah, so Roxanne immediately losing the Dragonite, and just that's the difference between game 1 and game 2. Even though we didn't even get to 4 hits at that point, even if we had the loaded dice, odds are it probably would have still taken a knockout because of being able to deal so much damage. Ursaluna hitting an Earth Power into the Dondozo, but then we're taking a snooze now, so this Dondozo has to take minimum... Dondozo, sorry, my apologies. The Ursaluna Sleepy Bear is going to have to take at least 1 turn of sleep. So Alexander in a arguably very commanding position, knowing that they have the power to basically go for 2 big attacks and potentially try and put Rillaboom to sleep, or just try and double into the Rillaboom to knock it out. This bear cannot do anything this turn but either tank hits or switch if there are Pokemon in the back, because I have lost track of how many Roxanne actually has.
No switches left. Yeah.
No switches.
Yeah, so it's well, no switches from Roxanne's side, right? So now this Scale Shot's just gonna be able to safely land into the Rillaboom. Even if Wood Hammer comes out here, right? Rillaboom's just gonna knock itself out, so you're not really too concerned about that. And Ursaluna is just gonna be sleeping here. I mean, sure, you whiff, right? Of course you would have preferred to connect connect all 5, right? But even then, like, we're gonna see high horsepower go into the Dondozo, so not even opting to go for that Wood Hammer. Yawn's gonna land in the Rillaboom, and this game is almost everything but over. I mean, realistically, it's so interesting because when you look at the turn where that high horsepower and Blood Moon came out, at first you look at the turn, you're like, okay, it missed on the it missed the target, it didn't hit the Dragonite. Blood Moon, you know, at least you still get some chip, but mixing it in with that yawn with no terrestrialization, even though Wood Hammer could have come out, was a really good play from Alexander to just completely swing the momentum. So definitely Roxanne took their foot off the gas for 1 turn. Unfortunately, just, you know, the wrong targeting just resulted in being put behind. But Skill Shot did miss here, so that is something.
Gosh, I mean, that is kind of devastating to see. 0 hits on the Ursaluna. It is still asleep, so it's not the most detrimental thing in the world. Obviously, missing an attack is bad as you want to get some damage off. However, you're not having damage traded back into you from this Ursaluna. As a Blood Moon may well knock out this Dragonite, and it would do a significant amount of damage to Dondozo. So we're happy it's still asleep, but we're reaching a point when this Ursaluna is likely to be waking up soon. Rillaboom now also taking a snooze. So we've got a very, very slow board. People are really capitalizing on that extra hour's worth of sleep. Rillaboom trying to do something like a Grassy Glide, but just snoozing through it. Dragonite hitting the scale shot this time. Bless your cotton socks. We have 1. We have 2. Are we thinking 4 or 5 for this one, Joe?
I think 5 it would be my take, but we'll see. Yep. All right. Nice. But yeah, you know, being able to get those 5 hits down in the Ursaluna, getting it over half. I mean, to be honest, all you had to do is connect the skill shot at this point, right? Because now Dondozo is going to be able to throw this body press into the Rillaboom, going to be able to get rid of it, and this just leaves Ursaluna in a very like precarious situation. I want to say like it's pretty much over, right? Like I mean, Ursaluna does some crazy things with leftovers, but unfortunately in this is probably not going to be able to really come back from this position, especially with that sleep happening. And I think it just goes to highlight, right? Like no matter how good of an advantage you can get from a turn 1 read, right? If you take your foot off the gas or make a wrong double up, the opponent is able to reposition themselves properly, can put you in a good spot. And I think from Alexander's position, if I'm able to make one call like that and off of a slight mistake be able to put myself in a decent position, I'm feeling probably pretty good about the matchup, actually. I do think even in game 1, right, it was just about how you're converting off of the Annihilate's pressure on turn 1.
And even losing the Annihilate on turn 1 of game 2, as we've seen here, Alexander was really able to just keep everything moving and forcing Roxanne to keep switching. Yeah, the Rox might have done that much chip damage, but it's hit in really, really key moments. That Dragonite losing its multi-scale, guaranteeing that it's able to be essentially one-shot from Alexander's scale shot. It's the little things, the little movements and adjustments that you're kind of working through. Alexander's clearly learned a lot from game 1 and has transitioned that over to game 2 and really been able to put on the gas and just go, right, this is how I'm going to be moving things. We're seeing another scale shot into Ursaluna. We're wanting to see a 5, but it could be a 4. We don't know. There's a 4. We had 5 last time. We're going to keep it fair. Decreasing the defense and increasing speed again. So Dragonite is going to be hitting, you know, probably able to jump between Greece and Belgium as much as they want. Blood Moon hitting to Dondozo, not actually taking the knockouts on Dondozo, is able to just say, yeah, have you considered going to sleep once more? So this bear is going to be drowsy, and after the next turn's conclusion, it will be asleep once more.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, right, it's just kind of formalities. I like the Ursaluna having the yawn land on it. Maybe if a critical hit went into this Dondozo, there would have been a potential chance here. But the fact that you need to use Blood Moon to really get big knockouts, but then you can't use the Blood Moon because you can't Earth Power a Dragonite, right? So you need the Blood Moon available. This yawn is just going to seal the game for game 2. I think it's a really interesting look. Again, I kind of mentioned this, right? Like you can have a really favorable turn 1. Like the read was really aggressive from Roxanne. I was actually very impressed. Just going for a knockoff and a attack into the Annihilate, like you can get punished really hard for that, right? Like if that's just a close combat immediately into the Blood Moon or into the Incineroar, that's pretty rough. And you probably can't take a risk like that again on turn 1, especially if Alexander chooses to keep one of the slots honest with that close combat. So I think that was the game for sure to try and convert off of that. Now going to have to maybe try and approach that turn 1 a little bit differently again. I think really it's just about, and it's such a small detail, right? Like the Woodhammer versus high horsepower, when you contrast them, you look at it and you're like, okay, well, high horsepower makes more sense because it's doing more damage into Volcarona, right? But it's just like pinpointing those small little details of, okay, if I throw out Woodhammer, I'm still going to get this knockout on the Volcarona. They're both contact, so it's not changing that either way. And on top of that, I would be able to also get that knockout on the Dragonite, or at least like enough chip to put it in low range, right? Like all those small details matter and can make or break a game that you know, you might be in a really good position, and you need to make sure that you can obviously identify those margins, even if they might be hard to see sometimes.
Oh no, absolutely. It's that kind of level of play that we've really expecting players to be stepping up to and jumping through every hoop possible to go, this is my exact line of play, even from turn 1 to turn 20, having such a firm line and predicting where your opponent's going to be sitting. The key of it is understanding what you need to do, but also what your opponent needs to do to be able to take that victory from you. So there's a lot that's happened in these 2 games, and game 3 is now going to be kicking off. Are we going to be seeing the same leads? We're going to be seeing anything different? I don't actually know. This is a bit of a spooky one, as both trainers have had some really, really good leads. So we're going to see Goldengo and the Alolan Ninetales coming out. A complete switch. It was Alexander saying, I've won with it last game, I'm going to go with it again. Dondozo and Annihilate joining the board. So this is a completely different dynamic from what we've seen on the previous games.
You know, it's funny. We were talking in the beginning. I was kind of like, oh, it's really interesting they have the Terrifier and the Annihilate here because it's not really something you would expect to come up much with Sash. But I actually think this is the one situation where like Terrifier is really nice to have because if you get Icy Winded and Shadow Ball, you can't actually live because of the Terrifier on the combination of that double up. There is a lot of pressure here from Roxanne, right? You can't just opt to go straight up for something like a Nasty Plot in an Aurora Veil turn 1. You really don't care if your Ninetales gets Yawn because you could just immediately switch that into the Rillaboom. I think what's going to be a really big deal here is what does the Golden Goat choose to do and what does the Ninetales choose to do. Although I do think with this lead, if Roxanne plays it safe, just goes for that Aurora Veil and Nasty Plot, this will be a very strong turn 1.
Oh, absolutely. There are so many lines of play that can happen. So we are going to see the ever-faithful Ninetales going for an Aurora Veil. We are going to be ensuring that we're basically halving all of the damage that our Pokemon will be taking for the next few turns. Annihilate going for a coaching. It worked previously. We're going to have a massively buffed Dondozo. Man's going to be standing so big, he's going to cause a total eclipse because he is that massive, increasing its defense and physical attack. Whilst Goldengo actually also going for a Nasty Plot. So a seemingly somewhat passive turn with not a lot of damage being dealt out, but multiplying the amount of damage that's going to be coming in the next few turns. Alexander's really going to need to make use of moves like coaching or like the buffs from Quiver Dance to ensure that we can get some damage through these screens, as these screens will make Roxanne's Pokemon that much more of a big boss mob with that much more defense. So it's a very, very smart play from both trainers.
Yeah, we are going to see the Icy Wind come out here, which is going to slow down this Annihilate, making it so that the Golden Go can just go for this Make It Rain. Now, the main thing you have to be concerned about, even though you did land the Yawn into the Ninetales, oh, we're going to actually see Shadow Ball come out here, so not opting to go for Make It Rain. Preserve Golden Go special attack for the next partner coming in. It is going to get the knockout. The Annihilate was probably going down either way, but the main important thing here is you're actually going to be preserving that special attack stat. I might have still preferred to see something like a Make It Rain come out here just because you would have been able to get a little bit of damage into that Dondozo, but Golden Go being able to take the Wave Crash overall well behind Aurora Veil. Now, you are allowing your Ninetales to go to sleep here, or actually, you're not allowing it to go to sleep because it ended up getting Body Press the previous turn. So, I mean, it's okay. I think Volcarona now is in a decent position, but with that +2 Golden Go, opting not to drop its special attack, it is a better position for it, for sure.
Absolutely, and Alexander has that buff of there are two Pokemon that don't particularly like to take a Fire-type move. You know, this Volcarona does have Heat Wave, which has the potential to hit both of Roxanne's Pokemon, so it was likely that we're going to see a Terrestrialization coming out, and that we do, wanting to preserve the Goldengo going into its Terra Water, so it's going to go from taking that Heat Wave very, very poorly to kind of brushing it off like just a little bit of sun, slap some Sun Cream on, and you're going to be fine. Volcarona, having baited out the Heat Wave, is just going for a Protect, so we're going to be allowing Dondozo to storm in and try and take some KOs. Ninetales wanted to slow the pace down and ensure that Goldengo is going to be fastest on the board so it can take some critical knockouts with that boost. Only hitting into the Dondozo, slow gets slower. I'd be able to catch that fish if I was a fisherman myself, and Goldengo trying to go for a Shadow Ball into that. We really don't like the Volcarona, whilst Dondozo, after you've terrestrialized, doesn't really present much of a threat. We're going to see this Wave Crash go in and do a decent amount of damage, but potentially not quite enough, actually, to take a knockout next turn. You know, that could be argued, but, you know, it was a decent amount, so Goldengo's still feeling kind of okay here.
Well, I think the main part of this turn is you can put it in range of Body Press now because Body Press won't be resisted. But the main thing is you're going to allow your Volcarona now to take a +2 Shadow Ball. With that Life Orb boost, it is going to do a good chunk of damage. Now, I did find it interesting that Ninetales opted to stay in the previous turn because you could have also done a switch to Rillaboom and Protect, potentially calling out the Volcarona Protect. But we are going to see the Shadow Ball just knock out the Volcarona. I'm a little bit surprised about that, but it isn't behind any kind of screens or damage reduction or anything, and now just being in a position where even though this Golden Go is going down, it got so much value. Alexander had to trade so many Pokemon for it. If something like that Ursaluna is in the back, even if Rillaboom is in the back, it will be really good here, especially next to this Ninetales being able to pin the Dragonite in the back.
Yeah, so I was, you know, talking about this Dondozo being able to just survive, and survive it has. So Dondozo is able to still keep threatening Yawns and threatening like big wave crashes onto Pokemon, and it's just going to be able to keep healing and healing. So we've seen, as a cheeky sneak preview, Alexander has Dragonite in the back, so that's going to be coming out, but it doesn't look very favourable sitting across from an Alolan Ninetales. That does threaten a potential one-hit knockout, which is really, really scary. Roxanne taking the time and choosing to bring in their own Dragonites. So I believe in one of the games we've seen that Alexander's Dragonite may well be faster, but you can't ignore the Ninetales that sat on the borders. One Blizzard may well be enough to just straight knock out Alexander's Dragonite, even through multi-scale with that 4x super effective ice type moves, anything into it really. So some terrestrializations may well be forced this turn, as we saw previously.
Yeah, I think it's worth, I mean, the biggest thing to really note that I think just kind of like almost not necessarily like guarantees that Alexander is going to lose, but puts Alexander in a really bad position. The fact you're running Terra Normal instead of Terra Fairy, you're just completely susceptible to Icy Wind and Skill Shot onto this Dragonite. And we are going to see Icy Wind just get clicked here, slowing down the Dragonite. So now the opposing Dragonite's going to be faster and going to be able to land that Skill Shot into the opposing Dragonite, which is going to be able to isolate this Dondozo down to a 1v3 if this skill shot is able to get the knockout. It is going to come down to whether or not it is able to get 5 hits potentially. We're going to see 3. We're going to see 4. Are we going to see a 5th hit? And fifth hit might not even be enough, but it is 4 hits. But Ninetales still going to be able to Blizzard this next turn. But I definitely think still being pretty happy about being able to get all that damage down on that Dragonite.
Oh gosh, absolutely. And the defense reduction on Roxanne's Dragonite essentially means that 4 hits of Alexander's Dragonite hitting Scale Shot will be able to guarantee the knockout, as Scale Shot does have that boost of increasing your speed. So Dragonite will be back to essentially its same speed stat, but it is going to lose 1 stage of physical defense. So any physical Pokemon, Rillabooms and Incineroars or whatever may well be in the back, obviously we don't know from Roxanne's side, we are going to be a little bit more susceptible for damage from that. Yawn hitting into the Ninetales, so this little fox is going to be a wee bit tired as the snow does finally conclude. So blizzards, if they're used, are not going to be 100% accurate anymore. So a key piece to remember that Ninetales can't 100% hit both Pokemon. Aurorval also going down. So now we're going to be dealing standard amounts of damage.
I think that this ends up being a pretty good position for Alexander now, specifically because of the fact that Yawn ended up going into this Ninetales. If you opted to potentially maybe go for a switch or try to like move around your pieces a little bit differently, it might have been a bit better here, maybe even bringing in that Rillaboom before the Dragonite. But now with this double protect, you are guaranteeing that this Ninetales is going to go to sleep, and that is a very big deal here, because now with the Ninetales being guaranteed to go to sleep, even though Dragonite will get Grassy Glided here by the, or Grassy Glide by the Rillaboom, you are going to be able to still get an extreme speed down, and a potential Wave Crash being able to knock out this Ninetales will be a really big deal. Now, it is worth noting that because Dondozo can't Terrestrialize, even with that defense boost, Woodhammer is still going to be hitting pretty hard. So I think it really will just come down to, can Boom outlast this Dondozo, or will Dondozo be able to just sit there, go for a Yawn, protect, body press, win the game? I think with an extreme speed in Rillaboom, it probably is a little bit more weighted towards the Dondozo, especially if you throw out the second Yawn here. But there is definitely a couple of ways that this can go wrong. So we'll have to see what the Rillaboom opts to do here. Probably that Grassy Glide into the Dragonite, though.
Yeah, either way, we're going to be seeing some ridiculous amounts of damage coming out. A Terra Normal Extreme Speed is something that every Pokemon fears, hitting decently into the Rillaboom, but Rillaboom claps straight back with the Grassy Glide. Perfectly predicted, Joe, as it then takes the knockout onto the Terrestrialized Dragonite, taking it off the board and leaving this poor little Dondozo to do its best. Yes, Ninetales is currently asleep, but we cannot count that Pokemon out. There are always chances for moves like Blizzard to go for a freeze, and that will essentially kind of lock down Dondozo for a good few turns. So Rillaboom has now been yawned, and the Ninetales has had 1 turn of sleep, so we're going to be playing a real long game. Like you say, are we just going to have to keep seeing body press after body press after body press, as Dondozo will be able to just keep healing as much as it wants. There's currently not a threat of anything knocking off its leftovers, so even if Rillaboom's Grassy Terrain does run out, this Dondozo is going to have the potential to keep outlasting these Pokemon. Yes, Rillaboom's going to hit hard into it, but Ninetales, pure damage-wise, can't actually do a lot to hit the Dondozo, so it's all on that Rillaboom. Like you say, if we can remove the Rillaboom, it's very, very safe for Alexander, but if Roxanne can, you know, power through and keep that Rillaboom surviving around, then it's going to be a lot more in their favor. So it's, there's a lot going on, and there's a lot of key decision-making on where we're protecting.
I think in this position, it is very weighted towards Alexander, because even with the Ninetales being able to wake up here, unless you're able to land a freeze or a critical hit on your first turn waking up, you are very safe to throw a body press and then a body press into the Rillaboom. The only way that this is if Blizzard connects and gets a freeze here, but with the Dondozo at full health, right, the best thing you can hope for here is a turn 1 wake into a critical hit. With another body press coming out here into the Rillaboom, it's close, but it might be able to knock it out, and even then, maybe you can afford to take that Woodhammer just so it knocks itself out with the recoil. You have to make a decision here. Do you want to stall the last turn of Grass Terrain, or do you want to go for the body press KO? We are going to see Alexander is just going straight for that body press KO. Blizzard does miss again. This is a key Dondozo. Very big fish, still getting, still dodging the Fox's attacks. Now, we are going to see the Woodhammer come out. Is there a critical hit? No, there isn't. So this should be a locked end game for Alexander. I think even if you froze and crit every single Blizzard, you would not be able to break through this Dondozo.
Yeah, and that is the one of the few negatives that comes with a Pokemon like a lot of Ninetales. Yes, that Snow Warning and Aurora Veil combination is so powerful and can really swing the game in your favor by just giving your Pokemon nearly essentially kind of half damage from everything. But the moves that it runs outside of Aurora Veil can be very finicky, noting that the moves it has are Blizzard, which isn't 100% accurate, Icy Wind, which isn't 100% accurate, Aurora Veil then Protect, so we have not got any guaranteed hits once the snow goes away, essentially. So we are having to pray for a Roxanne side that this Blizzard will hit and get a massive freeze, but that damage amount dealt isn't going to be enough, and I'm sure Dondozo will be able to outpace that with one more body press. I mean, I never want to say the game's over before it's over, but this is looking very positive for Alexander right now, as one more body press may well take the knockout.
I think a big deal too here is that Ninetales isn't using any moves like Encore. Protect wouldn't have really been, or Yawn wouldn't have even been a viable option if there wasn't an Encore on the Ninetales board. But since there's no Encore option available from the Ninetales, it's just running that standard Aurora Veil, Icy Wind, Blizzard, and Protect set. It really only can just Blizzard here, right? And we're just going to see the Blizzard miss here, so not doing enough here. Unfortunately, Dondozo is a very agile fish, being able to dodge most of those attacks, but Wave Crash being able to cleanly knock out this Ninetales. And wow, like, I mean, to be honest, after the turn 1, it was looking really difficult. You lost the Annihilate, right? On turn 2, I guess, and then you lost Volcarona. It was looking really rough, but Dondozo just with those boosts being able to clutch up, and I definitely think it's worth like if you're kind of thinking about like, okay, of the cause of like, okay, I had such a good start but the Golden Go, where did it go wrong? I think like the really big aspect of that was there were a couple turns where I think there were opportunities to switch that Ninetales back out and potentially get in something that was a little bit more proactive, right? So on that turn you can pressure Volcarona with something like an Icy Wind and a Shadow Ball, but if Volcarona Protect stalls properly and then is able to sequence so it can knock out Golden Go, that can put you in a really awkward position, right? So I definitely think had Rillaboom gotten in potentially sooner, maybe pressured a Terra from the Dondozo, or been able to throw out a fake out so Golden Go could get that Shadow Ball in the Volcarona safely and still be in a good position, recycle into Ninetales, get up another Aurora Veil, you could have definitely seen it go a different way. But it's kind of tough because I feel like games like that, right? At first it's looking so strong for you. You're like, okay, I have like such good margins, I'm way ahead. And then it's like, oh, I switched in my Dragonite before I switched in my Rillaboom, or I like left my Ninetales on the board instead of like switching in Rillaboom. Like I definitely think it's stuff that it would be on evaluating it more, like having even the hindsight of it, you could see where the game could have changed. But in the moment, I think most players playing excellently. And Dondozo just being able to come back was like really impressive. I was kind of underrating it until I saw that Yawn go into the Ninetales on the turn where Dragonite got knocked down, and then Yawn came out again in the Rillaboom. I'm like, okay, I would much rather be on the Dondozo side in this case.
Yeah. Well, that's just it. Like I mean, I openly admit I was completely wrong in saying, yeah, I'd love to see a Tatsugiri alongside the Dondozo, but actually the fact that it's such a powerhouse on its own, it can just tank every single hit under the sun, you know, grass boosted, terrain boosted, wood hammers. We'll just kind of eat those for breakfast and just keep healing up. Like, I'll hold my hands up, I was incorrect with that Dondozo. That absolute monster cannot be wrangled even by a Master Rod. You know, you are going to do your best, but unfortunately, Roxanne wasn't able to whittle it down quite enough to take that win. So well played to both trainers. That was absolutely fantastic. So that win going to, I believe it's Sweden for Alexander. So well played for that. We're going to jump into, I believe, a 5-minute break. So don't go anywhere, trainers. Grab some water and make sure there's no fish in it. And we will be back shortly.